Wow. Okay, you've really outdone yourself for this request. Looks like we're going deep, really deep into the world of rivers for this deep dive. And judging by the sheer volume of stuff you've sent over, I'd say you're after more than just a little paddle in the shallows, right? We've got local Shropshire wildlife guides, global river stats, conservation reports, even a glossary of river terms for, like, year 6 students.
You're not kidding. It's clear you're interested in the why behind the water, so to speak. The hows, the wows, not just the textbook stuff.
Exactly. You want the full, what is it they say, the unabridged river experience.
Mm.
And speaking of unabridged, Leonore didn't hold back with those river facts.
No, she did not. Some pretty startling figures in there. Did you know since 1970, we've lost 76% of freshwater fish populations globally?
Seriously, 76%.
That's twice the rate of loss for creatures on land or in the sea. Really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so we're talking global crisis, clearly. But before we get to all that, I'm kind of curious about your own backyard, so to speak.
Yeah.
Abby's notes on the Shropshire rivers. I gotta admit, when I think diverse ecosystems, Shropshire might not be the first place that springs to mind, you know?
Yeah.
But Abby's recordings really paint a different picture. We're talking rivers, brooks, streams, ponds, meres,
Uh-huh.
which are like shallow lakes, right?
Yeah.
Bogs. Even the Shropshire Union Canal gets a mention. It's like this whole hidden network of watery worlds just tucked away.
And with all those different habitats, you get this incredible variety of wildlife, too. The River Wildlife and Habitat Source really brings that home. Otters, for instance.
Oh yeah, the otters?
They've made a huge comeback in Shropshire's rivers. Real testament to the conservation efforts going on.
Otters are so cool, aren't they? Such characters. I read they can hold their breath underwater for like 8 minutes. Makes you wonder what they're getting up to down there. And oh, Abby also mentioned these insects called demoiselles. The name just grabbed me.
Damselflies, basically. Close relatives of dragonflies. Absolutely stunning to watch up close. Iridescent wings they've got that catch the light. Just beautiful. Really speaks to the hidden beauty of healthy rivers or anything.
Yeah, it really makes you realize what we stand to lose, you know. But okay, we've touched on the threats to rivers both globally and closer to home. And Brandon's key issues piece, well, let's just say he doesn't sugarcoat it.
No, not at all. Climate change, pollution, habitat loss, it's all happening, and it's all impacting our rivers. Even in places we might think are relatively untouched, like Shropshire. That Rivers Trust report, the one you sent, really brings that home.
Yeah, it does. It's easy to think of those issues as something happening elsewhere, but they're right here on our doorstep too. What was it in the report that particularly struck you?
Well, for me, it was the way everything's connected, you see. Pollution, for example.
Uh-huh.
Agricultural runoff, that kind of thing. It doesn't just pollute the water, right? It triggers these algal blooms, which then suck all the oxygen out. Fish start dying. It's like a domino effect. And then climate change comes along and throws fuel on the fire, so to speak. More droughts, more floods, everything just gets amplified.
Yeah, it's pretty sobering stuff. We've been talking big picture so far, global stats. But are there any like specific examples, rivers that are really feeling the heat, so to speak?
Oh, absolutely. Nyla actually dug up some research on the most polluted rivers in the world. Believe it or not, the two worst offenders, according to some studies, are in the USA and Australia. Shows
Yeah.
you how widespread this problem is.
Wow. Yeah, it really drives home the point that this is a global issue, doesn't it? We've all got a part to play in this. On a slightly more positive note, though, I was really intrigued by UN's report on that Keeping Rivers Cool project. Planting trees along riverbanks. Sounds so simple, but apparently it can make a big difference, especially for fish like trout.
It's a great example of what they call nature-based solutions, you know? Simple, but effective. The trees provide shade, which helps regulate the water temperature. Plus, they prevent erosion, filter out pollutants, create habitats. It's a win-win all around.
And the best part is, it's not just some far-off solution. We could totally do that here in Shropshire. In fact, Abby mentioned something called a River Health Checker app. Have you heard of that?
I have, yeah. Sounds like a great initiative. It's a citizen science thing, right? People can report wildlife sightings, pollution, that kind of thing. And then all that data gets fed back to organizations like the Rivers Trust so they can monitor the rivers, identify problems. Really valuable stuff.
It's amazing how something as simple as like downloading an app can actually contribute to real change. But okay, we've talked about the threats, we've talked solutions, but I think it's time we actually got to know rivers a little better.
Right.
You know, figure out what makes them tick. And you, my friend, came prepared. You brought the Year 6 glossary of river terms.
Always come prepared.
I don't know about you, but I've always had a soft spot for a good technical term, even if it's meant for a 10-year-old.
Me too. Rivers might seem simple on the surface, but there's a surprising amount of complexity once you start digging deeper, you know?
Exactly. So let's kick things off with meanders. We always talk about rivers meandering, but what does it actually mean? They're just bends, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, they are bends, but they're not static. They actually change over time, shaped by the flow of the water itself. So as the water flows around a bend, it moves faster on the outside of the curve and slower on the inside, and that difference in speed causes erosion on the outer bank while sediment gets deposited on the inner bank.
Ah, okay, so that's how the bend gets more pronounced over time.
Exactly. The river's basically sculpting the landscape, slowly but surely. And then you've got deltas, which are another fascinating feature.
Oh yeah, deltas. Those are the points where rivers meet the sea, right? Always found those kind of mysterious.
They are incredible places, super biodiverse, incredibly important for all sorts of species, and they're formed by this buildup of sediment carried downstream by the river. As the river enters a larger, slower-moving body of water, like an ocean, it loses energy, and all that sediment it's been carrying gets deposited.
So it's like the river's dumping its backpack at the end of a long journey.
Exactly. And over time, all that sediment builds up and creates these fan-shaped landforms that extend out from the river's mouth. And they're vital for humans too, by the way. Fertile land for agriculture, transportation routes, protection from coastal erosion.
Wow, who knew deltas were so important? Though Leonore did mention they're pretty vulnerable to human interference. Dams, especially.
Yeah, dams can really mess things up. They block the flow of sediment, which can disrupt the whole delicate balance. And speaking of delicate balances, we can't forget about floodplains.
Floodplains. Okay, so I've always thought of floodplains as just, well, areas that flood.
Yeah.
But there's got to be more to it than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they do flood. That's kind of the point. They're designed to.
Designed to flood. That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, it's kind of like nature's pressure release valve. Those periodic floods, as messy as they seem, they're actually super important. All that nutrient-rich sediment gets spread out, makes the soil incredibly fertile.
So that's why you always hear about those ancient civilizations popping up around floodplains, right? Makes sense.
Exactly. And speaking of things we don't always see, remember Nyla's research on the Amazon? She mentioned something called the underground Amazon.
Wait, the underground Amazon?
Yeah, basically this massive network of groundwater flowing slowly beneath the rainforest.
Oh no, there's like a whole other Amazon underground.
Yeah.
That's kind of blowing my mind right now.
Right. It just goes to show how much we still don't know about this planet. We see a river, we think that's it. But that water's been on a journey, you know? Could have fallen as rain thousands of miles away, traveled through all these hidden aquifers.
Wow. Okay, so even our local rivers, they're part of something way bigger. This whole interconnected system spanning continents, even going underground.
Precisely. And it makes you realize protecting rivers, it's not just about saving one river, right? It's about safeguarding this entire web of life that we're all a part of.
Absolutely. It's all connected. Which reminds me, in that list of longest rivers you sent, it's that over 100 rivers are estimated to be over 1,000 miles long. 1,000 miles. Can you even picture that?
It's hard to wrap your head around, isn't it? We see those lines on a map, but
Yeah.
1,000 miles of flowing water, that's a whole lot of river and a whole lot of life it's supporting, ecosystems it's shaping.
Exactly. So next time I'm by the Severn, or even just a little stream somewhere, I'm going to try to see it with fresh eyes, you know?
Yeah.
Remember all those hidden connections.
That's what it's all about, seeing the unseen.
Well said. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive. It's been eye-opening, to say the least. Until next time.